Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is premature ejaculation. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about the difficulties that some men and women have in achieving sexual satisfaction. And of course we have a urologist from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the University of Pittsburgh Medical School, Dr. MChancellor. And of course, Dr. Chancellor, let us welcome you to the show this morning.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Haney, for having me.
And to tell you how delighted we are to have you. And I guess, Dr. Chancellor, to say up front that this indeed is a first for us because we've never had an opportunity to deal with this as an issue before, or any of these sexual kinds of issues that we will have to deal with today. But I think that up front we have to both admit that we're talking about something that's natural.
Yes.
And in doing so, to find that approximately 35 to 70% of the population might be impacted by what is generally called PM, premature ejaculation, I think that it's sort of worthy of us to try to at least bring to the attention of our audience some of the problems that are generally associated with that. Dr. Chancellor, let's start off by having you, before you get into your research dealing with PM, let's start off by having you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of the things that were important in eventually leading you to become involved in this particular topic.
Sure. So I'm a urologist. I'm a professor of urology at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. And I've been there about 10 years. I grew up in Detroit, and I went to school at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. And then I did my residency. I chose urology because I wanted to do a surgical specialty, but yet urology, as opposed to general surgery, has more hands-on in the office too. There's much more interaction with patient and more dealing with elderly patient. I enjoyed that. So when I finished my training at Ann Arbor, Michigan, I went out to the Columbia University in New York City. There where I did a fellowship in incontinence or the lower urinary tract, the plumbing problems. I specialize in that. I met my wife, who's also a doctor, when she was at NYU at Bellevue. She did her training there. And then we wanted to go into academic medicine as opposed to just seeing patient. I think I really like that, the physician-scientist role, where I do about half-time patient, but half-time translational research. So if I see a problem clinically, I can go into the lab and do the experiment and hopefully develop something better that I can bring back from the benchtop to the bedside.
You know, Doctor, we know that this whole issue of PM is so very, very important, but as we indicated earlier, when we talk about sex, we know that it's natural. And we also know that there are 2 or 3 specific purposes for that. And I think it depends upon how the mind conceives of it, but we all have to think in terms of procreation. I mean, there's no way around that. We have to talk and deal with it. And we all have to think in terms of some of the therapeutic things that sex might be used for. And so within that context, let's talk about this whole issue of PM. As a matter of fact, we didn't know that there was an initial for it prior to talking to you in reference to it. But it's ejaculation.
Right.
And so let's start. What does that mean, and how do you go about discussing that? Let's talk about that.
Well, the first you just said it, how do you go about discussing it? And it's hard for most people. People are so embarrassed by any type of sexual dysfunction that it takes them, they do the internet, they go to the bookstore, but it's so hard for them to tell not only their loved one, but their doctor. And as a urologist, as I specialize more, I realize men and women complain about difficulty with their sex life. And if you remember, up to about 10 years ago, when Viagra first came out, if you remember, everybody was so embarrassed with the ability to get an erection, ED, until Bob Dole made some commercial and got on TV. Then all of a sudden, the big taboo's been lifted, and men who can't achieve erection was able to seek help. So the premature ejaculation is actually the second step. That men now feel comfortable talking about, you know, hey, do you have some samples of Viagra or Cialis? But a condition where there's no good treatment is actually lasting long enough for the man and his sexual partner to be satisfied. Or premature ejaculation, there's no treatment, and yet it hasn't sort of come out of the closet. So premature ejaculation is more common than erectile dysfunction.
And of course, Doctor, let's take this first commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll bring it out into the open during the second segment. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. The topic is